In the early hours of September 26, 1983, inside a classified Soviet bunker known as Serpukhov 15, about 100 kilometers south of Moscow, a quiet alarm began to scream. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Yevgrafovich Petrov stood watch in the control room of the Soviet Air Defense Forces, responsible for monitoring the nation's OKO early warning satellite system. At 12:14 a.m. Moscow time, the screen flashed a chilling message: an American nuclear missile launch detected from the United States, followed moments later by more alerts. The Cold War was already tense. Relations between Washington and Moscow were brittle, trust was thin, and nuclear forces were on hair-trigger alert. Protocol demanded immediate escalation to the highest levels of Soviet command. Minutes, perhaps seconds, separated warning from retaliation. Yet, in that silent room beneath Serpukhov 15, with red lights blinking and history pressing close, Petrov chose to pause. And in that pause, the fate of the world quietly held its breath. By September 1983, the world was not at peace. It was merely quiet. Beneath that quiet lay a dense web of suspicion, fear, and nuclear readiness that stretched from Washington, D.C. to Moscow, Soviet Union. The Cold War, already decades old, had entered one of its most dangerous phases. Both superpowers possessed enough nuclear weapons to destroy civilization many times over, and both believed the other might strike first. Earlier that same month, on September 1, 1983, a tragedy had hardened attitudes on both sides. Korean Airlines Flight 007, a civilian Boeing 747, had strayed into Soviet airspace near Sakhalin Island and was shot down by a Soviet interceptor. All 269 people on board were killed. The incident shocked the world. In the United States, President Ronald Reagan condemned the act as barbaric. In the Soviet Union, leaders believed it was a provocation, possibly even a reconnaissance mission disguised as a civilian flight. Trust, already fragile, shattered further. At the center of this tension stood the Soviet military's newest shield, an advanced space-based early warning network known as OKO, developed to detect intercontinental ballistic missile launches from the United States. OKO relied on satellites in highly elliptical orbits, scanning for the infrared signature of missile exhausts rising from American soil. The system was powerful, sophisticated, and new. Like many new systems, it had not yet earned complete trust, even among its designers. One of the men assigned to interpret this system was Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Yevgrafovich Petrov. Born on September 7, 1939 in Vladivostok, Soviet Union. Trained as an engineer and serving in the Soviet Air Defense Forces, Petrov was not a politician nor a general. He was a duty officer, tasked with a singular responsibility during his night shifts: assess warnings from OKO and report them up the chain of command. His post on the night of 25 to 26 September 1983 was Serpukhov 15, a heavily guarded, top-secret command center located roughly 100 kilometers south of Moscow. Buried deep underground, Serpukhov 15 was designed to survive a nuclear strike long enough to coordinate a response. Inside, the environment was controlled and quiet: dim lights, constant hums of machinery, large display screens glowing softly in the dark. Petrov's role that night was not to make strategic decisions. Officially, his job was procedural. If the system reported a missile launch, he was required to notify higher authorities immediately. Those authorities, ultimately the Soviet General Staff and political leadership, would decide whether to order a retaliatory nuclear strike. The entire process was designed to move fast. In the event of a real attack, hesitation could mean annihilation. But speed came at a cost. The margin for error was terrifyingly small. At that time, relations between the superpowers were further strained by NATO's upcoming military exercise, Able Archer 83, scheduled for November 1983. Although officially a drill, Able Archer simulated nuclear command and control procedures with unprecedented realism. Soviet intelligence feared it could mask a real first strike. As a result, Soviet forces were already on elevated alert in late September. This was the backdrop against which Petrov began his shift. Shortly after midnight Moscow time, the control room at Serpukhov 15 settled into its usual rhythm. Officers monitored screens, recorded routine data, and waited. Outside, the world slept, unaware of how close it already stood to catastrophe. Inside, the OKO satellites continued their silent watch over missile fields thousands of kilometers away, particularly in states like Montana and North Dakota, home to American Minuteman ICBMs. Petrov understood the theory behind the system. He also understood its limitations. The satellites detected heat, not intent. Clouds, sunlight, and unusual atmospheric conditions could, in rare cases, confuse even the most advanced sensors. These concerns had been raised quietly among engineers, though officially the system was declared operational. As the minutes passed, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The displays glowed steadily. Voices remained calm. Yet the political climate meant that any anomaly, any signal, would be interpreted through a lens of fear. In such an environment, a warning was never just a warning. It was a potential verdict on humanity's future. Petrov later recalled that he felt uneasy that night, not because of any specific sign, but because of the moment in history itself. The world felt brittle. Too many events had aligned. Too many misunderstandings had piled up without resolution. A single mistake, a single false assumption, could trigger consequences no one could undo. And then, without warning, that assumption would arrive. In the next moments, the OKO system would break the silence. And one man, sitting quietly at Serpukhov 15 on September 26, 1983, would find himself standing between protocol and intuition, between machinery and human judgment, between peace and irreversible fire. The quiet of Serpukhov 15 was shattered in the early hours of September 26, 1983. At precisely 12:14 a.m. Moscow time, the OKO early warning satellite system issued a chilling alert. An American missile had been launched from the United States toward the Soviet Union. The display on the monitor glowed red, casting a harsh light on the otherwise dim control room. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Yevgrafovich Petrov felt a sudden chill, though the room temperature remained steady. He knew immediately the gravity of the situation. According to Soviet protocol, he should have reported the launch to his superiors at the General Staff, which could have triggered an almost instantaneous retaliatory strike. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction, MAD, left no room for hesitation. One mistaken alarm, one false report, could ignite a global catastrophe. Petrov checked the system again. Another missile was detected, and then a third. Soon, the screen indicated 5 missiles had been launched. Each alert was accompanied by a loud warning tone. The red lights blinked urgently. Outside the bunker, the Soviet night remained calm, oblivious to the tension underground. But inside, the air seemed to thicken. Every second stretched longer than the last. The lieutenant colonel's mind raced. The Cold War had been a constant presence in his life, a shadow he had grown used to, but the reality of those 5 missiles made it frighteningly tangible. He considered the facts. It was 1983, just weeks after Korean Airlines Flight 007 had been shot down near Sakhalin Island, an incident that had already fueled mistrust between Moscow and Washington. Could this really be an attack? Or was it a false alarm? Petrov knew the limitations of the OKO system. The satellites were designed to detect missile launches by sensing the heat emitted from rocket engines. They were sophisticated, yes, but prone to errors under certain atmospheric conditions. Sunlight reflecting off high-altitude clouds could sometimes appear like a missile's heat signature. The system was new, and while engineers trusted it, there was a lingering uncertainty. Minutes passed, each stretching into what felt like an eternity. Petrov weighed his options. The decision seemed impossible. Follow protocol blindly and alert the general staff, risking retaliation for what could be a technical glitch, or trust his judgment and wait for confirmation, knowing that any delay could be considered insubordination, perhaps even treason. His instincts guided him. Something about the pattern of launches did not make sense. Only a handful of missiles, rather than a full-scale strike that would be expected if the United States were truly initiating a first strike. In Petrov's mind, a real American attack would not be limited to 5 missiles. It would involve dozens, even hundreds, aimed at major Soviet targets to cripple the country's nuclear response. He decided to report the alarm as a false warning. It was an act of courage and reason, performed quietly without fanfare. He later described it simply as a decision based on intuition and experience. In the bunker, no one knew what was coming next. Neither the staff in Serpukhov 15 nor the generals far above them. Petrov's choice was his alone. Meanwhile, the computers continued to signal incoming missiles. The red lights continued to flash. Petrov watched each alert silently, his heart beating steadily despite the gravity of the situation. He analyzed every bit of data on the display, recalling training exercises, comparing this event to simulations he had run in previous months. Each calculation reinforced the same conclusion. Something was wrong with the satellite readings. By the early moments of dawn, Petrov's assessment proved correct. The missiles were not missiles at all. They were false alarms, triggered by the reflection of sunlight off clouds in the upper atmosphere. The OKO satellites had misinterpreted the infrared signals, creating the illusion of a real attack. The tension in Serpukhov 15 eased, though the implications of that night would not fully settle for years. Petrov had acted decisively, not by following the rigid chain of command, but by using human judgment in a moment where protocol could have led to unimaginable destruction. For decades, the world remained unaware of how close it had come to disaster. It was only years later, when the story emerged, that historians and journalists began piecing together the night when one man's decision prevented a nuclear war. Stanislav Petrov, in that underground bunker, had kept the world from sliding into flames. History would remember him not for following orders, but for trusting his mind when the fate of billions rested on a single choice. The quiet heroism of that night at Serpukhov 15 remains a testament to the power of human judgment, courage, and the thin line separating survival from annihilation. The night of September 26, 1983 had settled into tense silence at Serpukhov 15, but the echoes of the earlier alarm still lingered in Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Yevgrafovich Petrov's mind. Though the satellites had falsely indicated a missile attack, the memory of those flashing red lights and piercing alarms refused to fade. He had chosen to trust his judgment over protocol, a decision that could have meant the difference between life and total annihilation. For Petrov, the responsibility of that moment was heavy, more than any medal or recognition could ever convey. Outside the bunker, the Soviet Union remained unaware of just how close it had come to disaster. The early hours of the morning in Moscow were calm, the streets quiet under the dim glow of streetlights. Citizens slept, oblivious to the invisible tension stretching across the globe. Yet deep underground, in a confined control room filled with humming machinery and blinking monitors, the fate of millions had rested entirely on one man's reasoning. Petrov replayed the events in his mind. He remembered the screen showing 5 incoming missiles and the almost instinctive calculation that a real strike would not be so limited. In strategic terms, a true first strike from the United States would aim to decapitate the Soviet leadership and cripple its nuclear response capabilities, likely launching dozens or hundreds of missiles, not just 5. That understanding, combined with his knowledge of the OKO early warning system's quirks, had guided him to make the decision he did. The psychological burden was immense. Military protocol demanded compliance, yet human instinct had prevailed. Petrov understood the potential consequences. A false report following protocol could have unleashed a Soviet counterstrike, setting off mutually assured destruction. The thought that a single misinterpretation could annihilate cities like Moscow, Leningrad, and Kiev, and potentially ignite a global nuclear war, was almost unbearable. As the hours passed, Petrov continued his shift with meticulous care, monitoring systems that now seemed almost benign in comparison to the earlier chaos. Engineers and military officers had warned that the infrared sensors of the OKO satellites were susceptible to errors caused by high-altitude clouds reflecting sunlight. In the cold logic of technology, the warning signals were explainable. But in the human dimension of history, every blinking light could have been the harbinger of global catastrophe. Meanwhile, tensions outside the bunker remained high. In Washington, D.C., President Ronald Reagan had publicly called the Soviet Union an evil empire. Earlier that year, and international relations were fraught with mistrust. NATO's Able Archer 83 exercise, a realistic simulation of nuclear command and control, was scheduled for November. Soviet intelligence feared that any such maneuver could mask an actual attack. Every alert, every technical glitch was filtered through this lens of fear and suspicion. Petrov was acutely aware of these political currents. He was not just observing a machine. He was interpreting signals within the context of global strategy and historical tension. The knowledge that his decision might prevent escalation weighed heavily, but he also knew that panic or overreaction could be catastrophic. In a moment of clarity amidst chaos, he had exercised calm judgment, a rare commodity in a world primed for fear. The decision to report the warning as a false alarm was quietly revolutionary. Petrov was neither a general nor a statesman. He was an officer on duty, trained to follow orders, yet history demanded that he transcend protocol. By relying on his understanding of missile patterns, satellite limitations, and human psychology, he averted a chain reaction that could have destroyed the planet. Later investigations revealed exactly what had occurred. The OKO satellites had been misled by the reflection of sunlight off high-altitude clouds. Infrared sensors, designed to detect missile exhaust, had misinterpreted the glint as 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles launched from the United States. The system worked as designed, but in a scenario where human judgment was required, Petrov's reasoning became the safeguard against catastrophe. Years later, Petrov reflected on the night with humility. He claimed it was simply intuition and training, Yet the world would come to recognize his actions as extraordinary. While generals and political leaders remained unaware at the time, historians later described the event as the closest the Cold War had come to an unintentional nuclear war. Petrov's calm in the face of alarm, his patience, and his careful evaluation of conflicting data exemplified the delicate balance between technology and human oversight. The night of September 26, 1983 reminds us that history is often shaped not only by treaties, armies, or policies, but also by the quiet courage of a single individual making the right decision at the right time. As the sun rose over Moscow, the tension in Serpukhov 15 slowly subsided. Petrov completed his shift, knowing that the world had remained blissfully unaware of how close it had come to annihilation. And though the alarms had stopped, the lessons of that night, the importance of judgment, reason, and restraint, would echo for decades, shaping how nations thought about the terrifying power of nuclear weapons and the responsibility of those who guard them. The morning of September 26, 1983 dawned quietly over the Soviet Union, as if the world itself had taken a collective breath after a night of unseen tension. In the underground bunker of Serpukhov 15, approximately 100 kilometers south of Moscow, the blinking red lights had finally stopped, and the air hum of the Soviet early warning system, OKO, returned to its usual monotone. Yet, for Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Yevgrafovich Petrov, the psychological weight of the previous night's events remained heavy. Petrov knew the world above remained oblivious. Citizens in Moscow, Leningrad, and smaller towns carried on with their daily routines, completely unaware that for several minutes, the fate of humanity had balanced precariously on a single judgment call. The Cold War's shadow had never been more immediate, more real, than in those fleeting hours. The alarm had initially signaled 5 nuclear missiles launched from the United States, a scenario that, according to Soviet military protocol, demanded immediate reporting to the General Staff of the Soviet Armed Forces. Reporting the alert could have triggered a retaliatory strike, setting off a sequence of events that might have escalated into full-scale nuclear war. But Petrov, stationed at Serpukhov 15, had paused, trusting his intuition and knowledge of missile patterns over the rigid chain of command. His careful analysis and judgment had prevented the catastrophe. As Petrov reflected on the events, he thought back to the broader context of 1983. Earlier that year, on September 1st, Korean Airlines Flight 007, a civilian Boeing 747, had been shot down near Sakhalin Island after accidentally entering Soviet airspace. All 269 passengers and crew were killed, including U.S. Congressman Larry McDonald. The international fallout had intensified Cold War tensions. In the United States, President Ronald Reagan condemned the Soviet action, while in Moscow, Soviet leaders feared Western provocation. The world teetered on a knife edge, and any miscommunication could trigger disaster. Petrov's decision that night was grounded not only in technical knowledge, but also in a profound awareness of this geopolitical reality. He considered the improbability of a first strike limited to just 5 missiles. A genuine American nuclear strike would target key military installations and cities to ensure a crippling response, rather than a handful of missiles. By trusting this analysis, Petrov had effectively prevented an unintended escalation, a human intervention between machine signals and political action. The rest of the morning at Serpukhov 15 was tense but uneventful. Petrov completed his shift with meticulous attention, recording data and ensuring that all systems were functioning correctly. Unlike the immediate adrenaline surge of the alarms, this post-crisis period demanded calm and precision. Any procedural mistake could still have led to confusion or false reporting, and the stakes remained historically significant. Despite the quiet, the wider world soon felt echoes of the night's tension. In Washington, intelligence agencies remained unaware of the near disaster but continued preparations for NATO's upcoming Able Archer 83 exercises. In Moscow, the Soviet military high command, including officers at the General Staff, were still unaware of the near miss, relying on Petrov's quiet judgment to prevent unnecessary alarm. The systems, machines, and protocols functioned, but it was ultimately a single human mind, Stanislav Petrov's, that preserved stability. Petrov's decision, initially unnoticed, became a private burden. He did not seek recognition. For years, the world remained ignorant of how narrowly it had avoided catastrophe. The weight of knowing the world could have ended in a single night through misinterpretation of technical signals left Petrov reflective and humble. His quiet demeanor and disciplined adherence to duty would later earn him admiration, though at the time, he was simply an officer doing his job with extraordinary judgment. The broader lesson of that night extended beyond Petrov himself. The Cold War had created a world in which technology, human fallibility, and global politics intersected dangerously. Small errors in satellite readings or delays in judgment could, and almost did, escalate into a global disaster. Petrov's calm, rational analysis under pressure highlighted the irreplaceable role of human reasoning, even amidst increasingly automated defense systems. Years later, historians would piece together the details of that night. Reports confirmed that the OKO satellites had misread sunlight reflecting off high-altitude clouds as missile launches. The system had functioned according to design, yet only human judgment, Stanislav Petrov's intuition and decision-making, prevented a chain reaction of catastrophic retaliation. The world had unknowingly been saved by the thoughtful intervention of one man in a quiet bunker beneath Serpukhov 15, on a seemingly ordinary night in the autumn of 1983. By mid-morning, life in Moscow returned to its usual rhythm. Streets filled with commuters, trams rattled along rails, and newspapers continued printing the day's headlines, none hinting at the near apocalypse that had just passed. Yet in the minds of those few who would later learn the story, September 26, 1983 remained etched as a reminder of how fragile peace can be, and how the courage and discernment of a single individual can shape the course of history. As the sun rose over the Soviet landscape, Petrov quietly concluded his shift. The alarms had stopped. The machines had performed their duty. But it was human judgment that had truly kept the world safe that night. And though no one knew it yet, history would remember this calm, decisive act as a turning point, not in battles fought or treaties signed, but in the quiet preservation of life itself. The events of September 26, 1983 had long passed, yet their significance continued to ripple silently across the world. In the underground bunker of Serpukhov 15, the blinking monitors had gone dark, the alarms had ceased, and Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Yevgrafovich Petrov returned home after his shift with the quiet knowledge that he had prevented a catastrophe few would ever understand. He carried no medals, received no immediate recognition, and remained a humble officer in the Soviet Air Defense Forces, blending into the machinery of military life. Yet, in that night of decision, he had acted as the fulcrum upon which the fate of millions rested. Petrov's story is not one of grandeur or political maneuvering, but of human judgment meeting history at a critical juncture. The Cold War, often reduced in textbooks to abstract treaties, missile counts, and ideological battles, had found its most dramatic resolution in a single room beneath the forests south of Moscow. Petrov, a man trained to follow orders, chose instead to trust his analysis over automated alerts. a decision that saved lives on an unimaginable scale. The years following the near disaster were a mixture of quiet reflection and bureaucratic routine. The world remained largely unaware of the events that had unfolded. Internationally, the tension between the United States and the Soviet Union continued, fueled by exercises like NATO's Able Archer 83, which would later be recognized as one of the moments that nearly triggered global panic. Within the Soviet military, Petrov continued his service without fanfare, performing his duties with the same diligence as any officer, but carrying the invisible weight of having averted nuclear war. Petrov's actions were discovered decades later, when declassified documents and first-hand accounts began to surface. Historians and journalists pieced together the night's events, revealing how the OKO early warning satellites had misinterpreted sunlight reflecting off high-altitude clouds as multiple incoming missiles from the United States. What could have been a chain reaction of retaliation and devastation had been stopped by the quiet courage of one man who chose to pause, analyze, and trust his judgment rather than follow protocol blindly. The legacy of Stanislav Petrov extends beyond mere heroism. It is a testament to the fragile interplay between technology, human decision-making, and history. In an age dominated by automated systems and rapid response protocols, the world was reminded that judgment, wisdom, and restraint are irreplaceable. Petrov's decision underscores the truth that sometimes the most powerful force is not missiles or armies, but calm reasoning under pressure. Over the years, Petrov received international recognition, including awards from organizations committed to peace and nuclear awareness. Yet he remained characteristically modest, insisting that he had only done his duty. His humility reflects the quiet heroism that defined the night of September 26, 1983, the kind that does not seek headlines but shapes history in profound and lasting ways. Today, when the story is told, it carries lessons that resonate far beyond the Cold War. It is a reminder that human choices, informed by knowledge, intuition, and ethical responsibility, can prevent calamities even when machines fail or systems falter. Petrov's actions also illuminate the dangers of a world reliant on automated systems for matters of life and death, a cautionary tale that continues to be relevant in an age of cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, and nuclear arsenals. In the quiet forests near Serpukhov 15, the echoes of Petrov's vigilance remain symbolic. A man on duty, observing blinking lights in the dead of night, changed the course of history without firing a single shot or giving a single command. The world continued spinning, largely unaware that it had been spared from the brink of destruction. The legacy of that night endures as a powerful story of restraint, responsibility, and courage, the story of how one individual's decision prevented the world from stepping into the unthinkable. Stanislav Petrov, who passed away on May 19, 2017, left behind a legacy that transcends borders, politics, and ideology. He is remembered not for military conquests or political influence, but for the profound impact of thoughtful action at the right moment. History, in its quiet way, often favors those who act with wisdom and courage in moments of extreme uncertainty. Petrov's life and decisions serve as a reminder that even amidst tension, fear, and technological complexity, human judgment remains the most vital safeguard of all. If the story of Stanislav Petrov has moved you, remember that history is shaped not only by wars and treaties, but by the courage and wisdom of individuals. One man, sitting quietly in a bunker at Serpukhov 15 on September 26, 1983, prevented a nuclear catastrophe that could have ended millions of lives. His decision reminds us that calm judgment, patience, and responsibility are more powerful than any weapon. History is full of unsung heroes like Petrov, ordinary people whose extraordinary choices changed the course of the world. By learning about these stories, we honor their courage and ensure their lessons are never forgotten. If you want to explore more hidden, dramatic, and untold chapters of history, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every story we uncover together is a step closer to understanding the world and the people who silently shape it.